Hello, everyone. This is the Disability Dish, episode 10. My name is Janelle Diaz, and I'm an assistant director in disability services. I'm co-hosting with...
Hi, everybody. Jodi Rachins, Director of Disability Services here at UMass Lowell.
And we're so excited to have some guests with us today to go over our topic today of holidays and what it's like to identify as a person with a disability and the impacts it has on people with disabilities celebrating the holidays. We are going to have our special guests introduce themselves. I'm going to have everyone have you say your name, your role at the university if you have one, or your profession, your relationship to the word disability if you have one. And, today's discussion is really just our thoughts, our opinions, perspectives, and our experiences. Okay.
And then we always say it's a little awkward right in the beginning, figuring out who starts and who talks, and we always shake it out. So it's good. So anybody want to go first with our first question today?
I can start.
Hi.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Kyra Barry. I am a nursing student at UMass Lowell, and I have a relationship with the word disability. A lot of the people in my family have a disability, and I myself have ADHD, potentially other things, but you don't need to identify as disabled to be disabled. It just is. Based upon current criteria of the word and other things. It's very complex, but I do identify with the word disabled, even if it's kind of a fraught topic for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Weisbrod. I'm the Director of Education for the Celiac Disease Program at Boston Children's Hospital. And so I work with patient families with a child with celiac disease, which is a disability that impacts their ability to eat, digest, their immune system to function properly. And so I work with them on setting up accommodations in schools and lots of other parts of life. I also have celiac disease myself and have a 9-year-old son with celiac disease. So I understand it both from the personal perspective as well as my everyday working life as well.
I can jump in next. My name is Nicholas Trunfio, and I'm a business administration student at UMass Lowell. And I would say that my relationship with the word disability would be that I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease a couple of years ago.
My name is Ainsley. I'm a sophomore student at UMass Lowell. My relationship with the word disability is that I identify as someone with a disability. I struggle with a lot of anxiety, especially socially around the holidays.
Faith, that you are in a way celebrating that you are able to do these days, and you're able to come together with other people and commemorate the occasion.
So the celiac disease community It's really interesting during the holidays because, during the rest of the year, we have such great laws that allow us to figure out ways for kids with celiac disease to fully participate in school and extracurricular activities and all of the things that they want to do as mostly normally as they can, as long as they're following a gluten-free diet. But because the only treatment for our disease is a gluten-free diet and the food in which we eat, it becomes extra challenging during the holidays because the Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't always apply. It doesn't apply, period, to going to grandma's house for dinner. There's no rules requiring Aunt Betty to make sure that her famous stuffing is gluten-free or that the desserts are all made gluten-free. And so it can become a real time of hardship and challenge and emotions for families managing celiac, because if your family isn't really supportive, then you could feel really left out and sad, and it can have a lot of negative energy around the holidays. And so we spend a lot of time, really working with families to help them find ways that they can feel included in the holidays, because it's probably the most challenging time of year for them.
Yeah, I would jump in on that too and say that probably a big relationship between my disability and the holidays would probably be related to food and sort of centered around that same theme. But I think besides that, for the holidays, I would agree that it's certainly related to the idea of family and just getting to spend time with people that you love.
Yeah, I also enjoy that part of the holidays, being with family, especially when, I usually have family visiting from New Hampshire, sometimes from Texas. It's really great to be with them. And yeah, as I mentioned, sometimes the holidays can be anxiety provoking for me. Usually that is because I'm just with a lot of people. Like if I'm having, Christmas dinner with my family and there's like 11 people and 2 dogs, it can be a little bit overwhelming. I used to struggle with that a lot more, but I found that being open with my family about that has made it easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm hearing across the board too is we have this idea that, society gives us this idea, right? The commercials give us this idea that the holidays are just magical and wonderful and all of these things. But, we can touch on too that, there's stress involved to live up to that hype or to meet those sort of traditions or to start new traditions or maintain, social activities and social expectations and norms. And as we've talked about in the past, stress in and of itself can activate nearly every type of disability in a different way, and can activate components of it. And in and of itself can, be debilitating in some ways. So I think that, that's sort of why we wanted to talk about this today, was that there's really wonderful things and there's things about, college students getting to slow down from the school year and those kind of things, but not always going home for an extended break or kind of being off the kind of routine of how things work and what you're expected to do, works really well for everybody. And as Vanessa was saying too, just thinking about, I wrote down sort of, even when people try to do things in good faith effort, but you can't necessarily assume that they know exactly all the rules to make sure they did everything exactly right. So they might have tried to do something that was, so we were saying before, Vanessa is actually related to me. And there was a time when my mom gave a holiday gift to Vanessa that she bought from the store that she thought was really cool. And then she said, these cookies, they're gluten-free or something like that. And then when Vanessa, who knows how to read labels like really closely and really well, was like, this is so sweet. It actually says guilt-free, not gluten-free. And it was a really good faith effort from my mom, shout out to my mom who tried, but this is something that the reality is like, you can't necessarily trust the good faith effort in this. So yeah.
And even though we couldn't eat them, it's really appreciated when people try. And it's not even the end result of having to eat them. It's just, that you felt that they thought about you and wanted to do something special for you, even though it didn't work out.
Truly the epitome of it's for the thought that counts.
Yes.
Right. Except that when you really do need to take care of yourself, you need to read the labels because you don't need to get sick over somebody who is making a nice gesture, right?
Well,
So
that's the other thing is that, regardless of if it's a food allergy or celiac, it doesn't matter if there's a food intolerance. I think that if we all thought about like some memories from holidays, most of them are centered around food.
Mhm.
And, to have to constantly be asking the questions like, what's in that? How did you make it? Did you wash the pans beforehand? Was there flour on the cutting board? It can be really hard, and you have to ask it in a way that doesn't make the people who are hosting feel bad too, even though you're just trying to look out for yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. I would agree that food-based memories are a big part of the holidays, for me growing up, especially.
I'm going to jump a little bit because I feel like Vanessa kind of brought us to a good point. But there was a Forbes article that actually discussed the barriers for people who identify as having a disability, and that they feel like sometimes they can be seen as high maintenance or like a burden. So, do you believe that the needs of people with disabilities can sometimes come across as high maintenance, or is that more so an internal feeling, or, kind of both?
I would say that when you're asking someone to do something they don't usually do, it can come across as high maintenance when it's really just the bare minimum maintenance needed to keep someone safe or to keep everyone enjoying the holidays. It's not any deliberate effort on someone's part to make things more difficult. It's just the bare minimum they need. But if the bare minimum is more than people are used to, unfortunately, it will come across as high maintenance. There's nothing really you can do about it. But see,
and they don't know how it impacts that person.
I have definitely felt the feeling of being a bit of an inconvenience during the holidays, especially when it comes to holiday shopping or Black Friday shopping, going to malls where it's the holidays and everybody in the world is trying to get Christmas presents and stores are packed and it's loud. I noticed that can be very overwhelming for me. So now my parents are, aware of that. And if they say, oh, hey, do you want to go to the mall? They're aware that at some points I might need to be like, hey, I need to, step out, in the parking lot for like a couple minutes just to calm down because all the noise and all the people can just be very overwhelming for me.
Yeah, so it's not just like attending a holiday event, but it's kind of everything that comes with being a part of a holiday celebration, right? So everything, even the shopping.
You kind of segued
definitely.
for us. Oh, sorry, Ainsley, go ahead.
I was just gonna say yes, definitely.
Yeah. You kind of segued into it for us that are there holidays, traditions, or events that you've had to opt out of, and that you've had to take care of yourself in some capacity, and on the flip side, the positive version of it is like, have you found different ways to kind of create your own traditions or holiday celebrations that can support you?
As I mentioned at the start, my family has a lot of people with disabilities, mostly mental ones like ADHD and autism and all that fun stuff, which has trickled down to me or to my siblings in one way or another. And that's not even all of them. But holiday family parties have been stressful in the past. Until like we all now, most of my siblings are adults and my parents are adults, of course. The only one who's a baby still is my baby sister. She's only a non-adult in the family, so she'll get to experience a family that has learned that we need a little bit of space occasionally for holiday things. Taking a step back from the larger family from my dad's side. My mom's family lives further away, so it's harder to get with them for the holidays. But stuff like that, taking time when needed. As I gotten older, my parents especially have trusted me that if I'm not just being childish when I'm leaving stuff. I'm just going to like take a break from things. But my brother, who also has ADHD, deals with it a little differently. He's a little more dopamine deficient than I am, so he comes across a little more hyperactive. He says that he enjoys the interaction part of party, so he seeks out everyone to talk to, whereas occasionally I get overwhelmed and I need to go take a break and hang out with the children, who tend to be ironically more low energy than the adults.
I think that planning ahead is just the most important thing that you can do. For me, I know that Thanksgiving wouldn't be Thanksgiving for me if I couldn't have the stuffing, the mashed potatoes and gravy and dessert. And so I'll typically just always volunteer immediately to be the one to make those things so that I know that me and my son can eat them safely. And I think that volunteering to make those things so that you know that you're going to be happy that with what you've brought on your plate and that you'll feel fulfilled is really important. I also think, just having those conversations in advance with your family members so that they can think about how to include you before it's like the day before is really important. I feel lucky that like Jodi is part of my family and, anytime she has things for her kids or family functions, she's always really thoughtful about making sure that there's gluten-free options for us. And it really does mean a lot. But Jodi and I always talk about it beforehand and, we talk about the places and what she's going to get, and we look at labels and make sure that those things are all right. And we do it, weeks before, not hours before, to make sure that there aren't mistakes. So I think just planning ahead goes a really long way to making sure that you don't have to sit out of these traditional gatherings.
I think planning ahead is a really great way to deal with that. my parents know that, I don't like to go to malls during this time because they are so busy. And that means that luckily I'm able to buy a lot of my Christmas presents online, which is very fortunate because it seems like every year the focus is shifting more from Black Friday and being in stores to Cyber Monday and online deals, which is really nice. That's something that has actually helped me over the years, which is pretty great.
I think going back around to the topic of food and planning it ahead, I was thinking when I was just coming up with that question, in terms of holidays and traditions, I think a big thing in my family now when it comes to food is, with me having the Crohn's and my grandmother having IBS, sort of the idea of like maybe asking everybody who's going
not be, fully partaking in the religious parts of your life. And so it can be a really hard decision for people. They make gluten-free communion wafers, they make gluten-free matzah, but they're not blessed in the same capacity that the ones that contain wheat starch are, and are not considered to be, a true replacement. And so for a lot of people, it can be making a decision for themselves or their child between eating something that they know will harm them or fully participating in what their religious organization is telling them to. And so, you can be faced with a lot of tough choices there too, that, do we harm ourselves and go against what our disability requires just to participate, or do we not participate and feel left out, or look as though we're being rude to our priest or our rabbi?
And the irony, and Vanessa, you probably know this data better than I do, but the irony is that most Jews are Eastern European, and there's something like 75% of Eastern European Jews have something GI tract related, which is often resolved by maintaining certain dietary needs. So the irony in that too is sort of thinking about even the most deeply religious people, are often probably battling certain GI conditions, but they're making a battle choice between the religion and health on a daily basis.
It's like most kosher for Passover products are made using potato starch, but in order for matzah to be kosher for Passover, it must contain wheat. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I was looking at the Trader Joe's latke box this morning as I was going to my son's school, and was like, why can't these be gluten-free? These should be gluten-free. That's so silly.
Yep.
Kyra says yum latkes. True.
Yum latkes always. They're potatoes and they're deep and they're cooked in oil, or however anyone else did. That's how I do it. It's like
salty fried stuff. I mean, come on.
The real question is sour cream or applesauce?
Both.
Both together.
My mom would agree, but I don't like sour cream, so I just stick with applesauce.
I go back and forth. Bye. So there.
So what I've been hearing a lot is kind of doing what works for you, trying to plan ahead, and really having a support system that allows you to feel included, that allows you to communicate those needs. What are other ways that society, families, friends, loved ones can support people during the holidays that might have differences?
And it doesn't have to be your disability
Yeah.
either. It can be sort of more general, if that's helpful.
I also had a question similar to this, because I know a friend who struggles during the holidays because historically the holidays have been a time where they were receiving treatment for their disability, and it was very stressful because they were struggling so much. And for me, I don't have, a stressful history of the holidays. I look forward to the holidays, for the most part, and they're a happy time for me. But I was wondering if any of you have any advice on, how to support someone who just, has had a bad history that time of year.
Well, there are different holidays around general stigma about disabilities, and so that kind of extends to the holidays. It kind of reminds me of this holiday movie, Home for the Holidays. It was just I don't know how many people here are familiar with it. But it just gives, just like when I think about that, I think about how this like stress. I feel like part of the problems from that movie came from not like the movie itself, like there was problems with the movies. I mean the problems within the movies for the characters. Was this feeling of things had to go well, and then things just don't go well a lot of the time. And there's expectation for oneself and for others and for your family that makes things more difficult than they necessarily need to be. I won't spoil the movie, but one of the characters deals with stigma for who he is as a person, and that affects how the holidays go. But that's a different topic than necessarily disabilities. But just sort of this, how your family's, how the stigma of disabilities can affect how others perceive you, can add to the stressors of holidays. And we talked about that Forbes article that talks about high maintenance, that expectation, that stigma, that disabilities and accommodating disabilities would be high maintenance, makes it more difficult. You have the stigma of yourself, like, oh, me asking for people not to put this thing that would kill me in the food is so high maintenance of me. And that stigma and that thing where even if you did ask, other people would be like, why are you asking me for this accommodation? Why can't you just like be chill and be normal, quote unquote? And whatever form, either accommodations in sort of the food you're served and the environmental needs you have. It just a lot to take into consideration sometimes for some people, when it really is just like, okay, how can I make a fun event for everyone? And it's just like the needs follow as such. But if you have this expectation how things should go, when you deviate from that, even if it isn't reality, it feels like a lot unfairly.
Here, the wording of "can you have just a little" or "just be normal" is something that our community struggles with so much. People say it all the time. And, it's not like they chose to have an autoimmune disease. It's genetic. It was passed down, for many generations before. None of us chose to be this way and chose to be making people's lives difficult. And we can't change ourselves. No matter how much I wish that my son and I didn't have celiac disease, there's nothing I can do to change that. And so we really, just have to do what we can to, we're also faced with the whole like fad diet place that celebrities have made popular, and remind people that we're not that, and that this is actually helping us maintain our health so that we can participate normally and we can be healthy and, avoid other complicated health issues. So I think that our new normal is what's going to help us be around for lots more holidays to come.
I think that's a great
Yeah.
point about the. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, I think that's a great point about the diets as well. Just from the perspective, I think one maybe stigma or perception is that during the holidays, people are really interested in asking, maybe if they haven't seen you in a while, how you're doing, but maybe also giving like their own suggestions about how they think that you could be doing better. And sometimes that can be maybe unwanted advice in some ways. Like if someone says, "Oh, you have Crohn's. Oh, I read that you should have try this diet." So I think that can be something too, that maybe around the holidays, people can just be a bit more understanding in that regard, of like that you're well aware like a lot of the time like of your condition and what helps you be better, and maybe asking something, sure, asking how they're doing and if you're doing well, but maybe also asking interests or hobbies that you're up to, or just things that aren't necessarily related entirely to your disease, as a trying to make that you as a person.
Nicholas,
really,
how many times have you been asked to be on are you on a plant-based diet?
right?
I've heard that one before, yeah.
It's so interesting how the holidays make people these unlicensed, unsolicited medical professionals. It's so interesting how those once a year conversations make people able to diagnose things.
Yes, I think also the holidays, it can be hard to speak up if you have, a disability, you need some sort of accommodation, because usually around that time people are kind of, excited about traditions and seeing family, and they're kind of in their own, holiday mood, and you don't want to kind of kill their vibe, I guess, and cause them any stress, being like, oh my God, I have to, make sure this doesn't have gluten in it. I have to, make sure the plates are really clean, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of can agree with that, Ainsley, that sometimes like we see the holidays as such like an exciting time and we're all kind of wrapped up in like Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, but for everyone that's not always the experience.
And I think Kyra kind of reminded me of something that ties through all of our podcast episodes too, and was our very first episode, was sort of like the representation in the media. And if we really think about holiday movies, I mean, boy, are there so many underrepresented populations. And disabilities is very much one of them, right? Because this like idea of the holiday time is really kind of like white family Christmas has minor problem, resolves it in the hour and a half, is sort of like the cisgender couple, and in those kind of things. And so there's a lot that, so even when representation kind of does find a way to creep in, as it sometimes does in holiday movies and holiday stuff, it's still kind of like the outlier and the tokenizer, right? Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. When you said Home for the Holidays, I started looking up to see if that was literally the one that Ali Stroker, who uses a wheelchair, is in, and it's not the one. I couldn't remember the name of the one movie she's in, but I was like, oh, maybe you're talking about that, and that's the one movie I can think of.
No, unfortunately not. And also, unfortunately, I think the one movie which disabled people are in a ton, the movie genre, are horror movies, but not necessarily represented in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's often used as the scary bad guys, or like to further antagonize the victim, or as like a source of fear, like you will become disabled. Oh no.
Right.
When the disabled community is the only community anyone can join at any time.
You are absolutely right. That's a great way to put it.
So let's kind of change gears a little bit. What is your favorite holiday? And does your disability impact this choice?
My favorite holiday is Christmas, and like I said, sometimes it can be overwhelming, going shopping or going to big crowded holiday parties.
What do you like most about Halloween? That was mine. Sorry. What do you most about Christmas? Sorry.
I like seeing my family, especially my family that, I have a grandmother who lives in Texas, so it's really nice to see her once a year and be able to catch up with her. And I'm lucky that I do have a family that I feel is very understanding of some of the accommodations I might need, because I know that not everybody's family is that understanding, but luckily, fortunately for me, they are, which makes the holidays, as least painful as they could be.
All right, Kyra, well, you Halloweened us, so let's talk it through.
Sorry about that. Well, my favorite holiday is Halloween, if you couldn't have guessed that already. I enjoy it. I like it's festive, I feel like, which is not what most people think when think festive, but you put decorations up. It's like a month-long celebration. It's got a vibe. You can go different ways about it. You can be spooky, scary, or spoopy, which is a newer term, I believe, about where you're kind of like cutely scary. You got a vampire, but it's like the Count Dracula vampire.
It's like an avocado with vampire teeth.
Yeah, it's like the Count from Sesame Street, sort of scary. It's not really, but it's fun. It fits the aesthetic. I like dressing up. I like candy, but honestly, candy's not high in the priorities for me for Halloween. Ironically, as much as I said I like the food related things, I like dressing up. It's like a month-long celebration, sort of, having fun.
And it's the one holiday that you can dress up as the other holidays.
Yeah.
Just to jump back to what Ainsley said, I think for me too, Christmas would be my favorite holiday as well. Just kind of a good reminder of just a time when everyone maybe can just sit around the tree and you can just kind of think about what you're thankful for. I think a lot of that's influenced too by it's kind of the one holiday a year I think where we're the ones with the big Christmas Eve party, at least before COVID, but that should hopefully be coming back this year. So it's always great to sort of be the ones to host it. And I think it ties back to earlier when I said, that idea of maybe having a more collective menu. I think at our house, it's like we try to encourage that if everyone brings one item, there's always hopefully something that everyone will enjoy.
And people get to experience something they maybe didn't know that they were gonna like. Yeah.
So I like Christmaka, which is not a real holiday, but my mom was raised Christian and converted to be Jewish when she married my dad. And so we celebrate Christmaka, where for Christmas dinner, we make potato latkes and brisket and have a very traditional Hanukkah meal. And we always save, if Hanukkah does not fall during Christmas, we'll save our last Hanukkah gift to open on Christmas with my mom, so that we still are respecting how she grew up, and not just completely forgetting it because she converted when she married my dad. But it's always just a really lovely time with my family. And my mom also has celiac, so like all of us are gluten-free. And so everything is just gluten-free that night, which is really lovely.
It's a universally designed meal.
Exactly.
For me, it's like Thanksgiving, and probably for the reasons that it is Christmas for others, is that Hanukkah has become a larger holiday in the undertow of Christmas, I think. And so, but Thanksgiving is that kind of time to join together as a family, and there are a lot of traditions, and it's been really interesting and neat watching, what was the Thanksgiving of my childhood sort of, I don't know, mutate basically as more people have joined and more families have joined, and trying to figure out how to, but it does it for me as somebody who I have anxiety, particularly about sort of the unknown situations, or where there's a lot of moving pieces, or there's a lot of, information to hold on to and think of and remember. And Thanksgiving can do that too, because there's kind of a lot to cram in, and, and especially when you have kind of a new version of a family with expectations, but then old family and those kind of things, and managing all of it. But so often I'm like very tired after the Thanksgiving weekend, but I am really also try to be as grateful as I can to have as much of that available and joy. Janelle, you get to weigh in. Come on, Janelle.
Okay. I would probably say, aside from my birthday, Christmas is definitely my favorite. I just really love like wrapping presents. I kind of name myself the ultimate present wrapper. And Jodi has indulged in some delicious cookie dough that I make with my family and friends. So yeah, it just brings me happiness. But with that, we're at our final question. So after this conversation, what's a takeaway that will stick with you if you have one? And/or has anything changed about how you feel as a person with a disability or as an ally about disability stigma? So I know it's a lot. So a takeaway, and then has there been any change about how you feel as a person or an ally about disability stigma?
I just think remembering to be thoughtful of everyone in your family or friends that you're going to spend time with. And, I think a lot of times we get really focused on our own disability and what we need, and just need to remember that everyone has needs and everyone has things that makes them happy. And so just remembering to, as much as we think about the things that we need to feel included, how we can also make others feel included, and planning as ahead as possible.
Planning ahead and advocacy and communicating seems to be a big part of this podcast episode dialogue, and I would agree about a lot of what people said. I thought it was interesting seeing how other people dealt with the holidays. We don't all have the same things. We're not all dealing with the same things. But I thought it was nice that we all have similar ways of coping with it, even if it manifests in different ways, because our needs vary, but the underlying themes are the same. For dealing with the holidays, and which is say holidays can be stressful for everyone. So this isn't just stuff that is useful for someone with disabilities. Someone who's neurotypical may have their own preferences for things, and they just need to advocate for themselves and communicate those needs and desires. There's like extroverts and introverts and all that going on with people.
I wanted to say,
oh, the battle of people. Okay.
I wanted to say thank you guys for, letting me know how I can better support my friend who, has, the holidays have historically been rough for them. So yeah, I think I will make more of an effort to make them feel more supported, during this time, and spend more time with them during other holidays during the year.
I was just going to add on to Kyra's point about, I think communication was really the main theme throughout the podcast, and preparation as well, for sure. And I would say that maybe one of the takeaways that maybe I didn't really think about before that Vanessa brought up was being inclusive, like with activities and everything, especially with like the kids at school. I think when I was growing up, I didn't have any relationship really with disability yet, since for me Crohn's was more of a recent development. But I think again, it's just no matter the stage in life, just trying to include as many people as possible and make everybody feel included in holiday celebrations is great.
I'm glad to hear that. And of course, Ainsley, I was so happy to weigh in. As much as my opinion is worth anything, I'm by no means an expert. There are several experts here, I think. I'm just a nursing student, so I'm not one of them. But happy that this episode was helpful for you, as well as being an ally. It's nice being supportive for other people in your lives in their differing needs.
I just appreciate always the human connection that comes out of these conversations. And this is our 10th episode that you all accumulated. So that's been really fun. We debuted this at the beginning of the year. And, just every episode, I'm always just feel really warm in the heart about like the human connection, and that there's such a universality, is that the right word? About these topics. And so I very much appreciate that.
Same. Thank you all so much. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah, what a great way to end the year. So thank you to all of you. And just a little plug, stay tuned. We are working to get this on all major platforms.